Now that Brock Faber has signed his extension, who's next for the Minnesota Wild?
You're Locked On Wild, your daily podcast on the Minnesota Wild. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is happening, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of Locked On Wild, your daily Minnesota Wild podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. We are your team every day. We thank you for making Locked On Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure you subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss out on any new episodes throughout the week. Today's episode of Locked On Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs are out of the picture, sports stop sporting the way we want them to. But that is where FanDuel can help. They're hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. On today's episode of Locked On Wild, we take a look at some comparable extensions for various players to see what we can expect from new contracts for Jesper Wallstedt and also for Marco Rossi. We'll take a look at what other teams did after players were done with their ELCs and try to get a sense as to where the Wild may go in both cases. So we're going to start with Jesper because there were a few recent extensions that I think could certainly lay the groundwork for what Jesper will get for his next deal. What do we know about Jesper Wallstedt? Well, the expectation is that he is going to be the guy going forward and that he will be the starting goalie for this team for a very, very long time. Got his first taste of NHL action this past season, played in 3 games, had a goals against average of 3.01 and a save percentage of .897. Those numbers largely buoyed by his first career NHL start against the Dallas Stars, in which he gave up, I believe, 7 goals. So those numbers a little lopsided because of that first career start. He was much better against the San Jose Sharks and the Chicago Blackhawks. But first taste of NHL action for Jesper, and it comes during his entry-level contract. Now, Jesper will be on the final year of that ELC this upcoming season, 2024-2025, and then he's a restricted free agent once that deal is done at age 22. Let's go to the most recent big extension that could potentially pave the way in Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, who just signed with the Buffalo Sabres for 5 years, $23.75 million per season, cap hit of $4.75 million. And as a 25-year-old signing that deal, which will take him till his age 30 season. What do we know about Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen? Well, he wasn't really expected to be the guy in the early part of his career. During his ELC, he played in a total of 13 games over the final 2 years of that ELC. And so then the Buffalo Sabres gave him a 2-year deal worth $1.68 million, a cap hit of $838,000 per year. And over the course of those 2 seasons, he started 87 games. And this past year, started 54 games, had 27 wins, which was the most for a Sabres goalie since Ryan Miller. And so the thinking as to what Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen can provide, the thinking changed. And the Sabres looked at Pekka Luukkonen and said, this is a guy that I think we can build around. They've got Devin Levy in the system as well. But Pekka Luukkonen's emergence led to the Sabres being comfortable enough in giving him a 5-year deal worth $23.75 million. Now let's go to a couple of other examples. We've got Jake Oettinger, who is 25 as well. So these two goalies a little ahead of where Jesper is at. And for Jake Oettinger, he signed his ELC after being drafted by the Dallas Stars. And he started 29 games in the second year of the ELC, then 48 in the final year of the ELC. And so the Stars elected to give Jake Oettinger a bridge deal. They gave him a 3-year, $12 million contract that will take him until he is 26, $4 million each season. And over the first 2 years of that deal, he started 62 and 54 games for the Dallas Stars. And so Oettinger, he came in much earlier than Pekka Luukkonen did. But I think the Stars, the next route that they go with Jake Oettinger is going to be a longer-term contract, probably similar to what Pekka Luukkonen got, but the AAV is going to be somewhat higher, I would say, for his services because he's turned into one of the better young goalies in the NHL. So this could be a potential path for Jesper to take, depending on how this upcoming season goes, could be a route for him to take something that's a little more short-term, leading to a longer-term extension once that one finishes up. Another player who had something similar is Alexandar Georgiev. He signed his ELC back in 2017, and over the course of that ELC, he started 10 games, then 33, and then 34 with the New York Rangers. But at the time of that deal, the New York Rangers also had Igor Shesterkin, and so Georgiev was a backup at best. He was able to start 33 and 34 games due to injuries for Shesterkin. And then after that ELC was done, he signed a 2-year, $4.85 million deal. So the cap hit was $2.425 million. Started 19 games, then 33 games. Then was traded to the Colorado Avalanche and signed a longer deal, a 3-year, $10.2 million deal with the Avs. $3.4 million per season for the cap hit. He'll be a UFA when he is 29. And for the Avs so far, 62 and 63 games collectively he has started over the last 2 seasons. So that's another route. I'm basically just trying to kind of paint the picture of these teams looking to go a little shorter term immediately after the ELC is done so that then they can get a sense of what they have before they commit long term. And the final one we'll look at is Linas Ullmark, who his route is even weirder. All the way back in 2014, he signed his ELC at 3 years, $2.78 million with Buffalo. He was originally drafted by the Buffalo Sabres. After that year was done, he signed a 2-year, $1.5 million contract, then signed a 1-year contract after that, and then another 1-year contract after that. And you look at his stats over the course of those seasons. 20 games started, then just 1, then 5, then 37, then 34. So a wide range of games started over the 5 years that he was with the Sabres. But Buffalo didn't really know what they had. And so they were hesitant to commit assets to a guy. They didn't really know what they were getting with him. And then all of a sudden went to Boston, signed a 1-year, $2.6 million contract. And then after that year, he started 20 games. And then it was the 4-year, $20 million contract that will take him through now his age 31 season. And the final year of that will be with the Ottawa Senators. So it's a winding path for a lot of these goalies, but here's the key difference. I think Jesper obviously has the pedigree to where you expect that you're going to get really good things from him at the NHL level consistently once he's at the NHL level consistently. Excuse me. So what will his next contract look like? It's entirely dependent on what happens this season. If he doesn't start a ton of games at the NHL level this year, then it's going to be a shorter bridge type contract. It's going to be a 2-year deal, maybe a slight raise over what he is currently making to allow the team an opportunity to get a real good look at him before they commit long term. If he starts a ton of games at the NHL level this year and looks really good doing it, then you'd be more comfortable, obviously, committing to, say, a 3 or a 4-year deal. But it's entirely dependent on what happens this season. And as of right now, you've still got Philip Gustafsson and Marc-Andre Fleury on the roster, which leads you down the path of there's probably going to be some sort of a short-term contract to see what he can do over the next couple of seasons before a bigger one comes after that. We've got some comparable contracts for Marco Rossi. Some interesting contracts handed out to various centers across the league. And so we'll take a look at what all of those players got after their ELC was done as we continue today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. Today's episode of Locked on Wild is brought to you by FanDuel. Folks, you know me. I love sports. I love them so much. I never want any of my favorite teams to stop playing, but the NBA and NHL are in off-season mode. Football is getting going. We've got the Olympics going on in Paris and Major League Baseball. There are options, but not as many of my favorite options as there are in the winter. FanDuel is here to help, though, because they can keep the sports going whenever you want. All you have to do is open the app, dream up any bets anytime you are in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there is something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. Welcome back to today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Reminder for you, coming up on August 25th from 12 to 3, we have a Locked on Wild live show and meet and greet for you at Zamboni's on 7th. Denny will, of course, be there, but we've got some great guests that'll be joining us. Alexis Pearson, State of Hoppy, Alex Micheletti, and Pat Micheletti joining us for the live show. We'll also have players from various Minnesota teams that will be joining us as well. So mark your calendars, August 25th, 12 to 3, going to be a fantastic time. We hope to see you there. So next up on the extension docket after Jesper Wallstedt is Marco Rossi, who will be eligible for one I believe, during this season. He's already eligible for a potential extension. And Rossi had a great season this past year, but it feels like had he got some more consistent help with him, that he could have had an even better year, which could have led to even better numbers and an even better contract than he is going to get. All told, Rossi, with 21 goals, he had 40 points on the season, and at the age of 22, he sets up nicely with what some other players, young players, have done throughout the early parts of their career. I'm going to start with Jesperi Kotkaniemi of the Carolina Hurricanes, because you look at what he did throughout the course of his career. First off, with the Montreal Canadiens. Over the course of his ELC, first year he played 79 games, 11 goals, 23 assists. Then played 36 games, 6 goals, 2 assists. And in the final year of his ELC, 56 games, 5 goals, 15 assists. then went to the Carolina Hurricanes. He signed a 1-year, $6.1 million contract at the age of 21 and put up 12 goals, 17 assists, 29 total points in that season for the Hurricanes. And then Carolina signs him to an 8-year, $38.56 million deal. Now, I'm sure there's more that Kotkaniemi brings to the table, and I would be willing to bet that there is, especially on the defensive side. But a guy whose career high going into that year is 12 goals. That's a lot of money to throw at that type of a player. And that averages out to $4.82 million per season. And Kotkaniemi, in the 2 years since signing that deal, he had 18 goals and 43 points in 82 games. And this past season, 79 games, 12 goals, 15 assists, 27 total points in those 79 games. And so you look at Marco Rossi. I don't know if the Wild don't have the finances to go with a 1-year deal before an eventual long-term solution with Marco Rossi. But it's interesting that you get such a high bump in salary and then go to a longer deal with a lower AAV. Let's go to Elias Petterson, who during his ELC with Vancouver played very well. He had 28 goals his first year, 27 the next. And then in 26 games, he had 10 goals, 11 assists in 2020, 2021. After that, he signed a 3-year deal for $22.05 million, cap hit of $7.35 million. And he's gone 32 goals, 68 points, 39 goals, 102 points, and 34 goals, 89 points over the last 3 seasons. And then he signed his gargantuan 8-year, $92 million deal with a cap hit of $11.6 million per season. I think it's safe to say that Petterson is higher up on the list than Marco Rossi is. So a 3-year deal at $7.3 million per season is probably that's probably not going to be necessary to get it done with him. And that mega deal, I mean, Petterson is, when he's on, he's probably one of the best, 15 to 20 players in the NHL, and so he's certainly worth that money. But that would be, I don't think it's going to take that for whatever comes next for Marco Rossi. Let's look at Jordan Kyrou. Kyrou on his ELC with the Blues, 16 games his first year, 1 goal, 2 assists. 28 games the next, 4 goals, 5 assists. And 55 games in the final year of that contract, 14 goals, 21 assists in that final year. He then signed a 2-year, $5.6 million deal, a bridge deal, where he put up 27 goals, 48 assists. So he had 75 points in 74 games. Then 37 goals, 36 assists in 79 games, which led to his 8-year, $65 million extension and a nice little $8.125 million cap hit per year. And he had 67 points in 82 games. What about Robert Thomas? Also of the St. Louis Blues. His ELC, he had 9 goals in 70 games his first year, 10 goals in 66 games his second year, and 3 goals in 33 games the final year of that entry-level contract. He did the exact same thing as Jordan Kyrou, a 2-year, $5.6 million contract in which he went 20 goals in 72 games and 18 goals in 73 games. And then he signed the exact same deal as Jordan Kyrou did. 8 years, $65 million with the $8.125 million cap hit. And he had 26 goals and 60 assists, 86 points in 82 games. And the final one I will throw at you on the Rossi front is what Casey Mittelstadt has done throughout the course of his career. Got the ELC with the Buffalo Sabres. And he had 1 goal in 6 games, then 12 in 77 games, 4 in 31 games in the final year of that deal. He then signed a 1-year deal for $874K with the Sabres and had 10 goals in 41 games there. Then he signed a 3-year, $7.5 million contract with Buffalo after that. 6 goals, 40 games, 15 goals in 82 games, and 14 goals in 62 games after that. And now he signed a 3-year, $17.25 million extension with the Avs after being traded to Colorado. He had 4 goals in 18 games to finish off the season. So all told, he had 18 goals and 39 assists in 80 games between Buffalo and Colorado. And so there are many different paths to what to do about young players from a contract perspective. And I think it all rests on knowing what you have. And that's the objective. That's what the team wants, is to know what they have so they can control some of that cost certainty. But honestly, with Rossi, it wouldn't surprise me if the team goes like a 2-year deal. Just to see, just to make sure, like the Jordan Kyrou and the Robert Thomas path, just to make sure that they know what they're getting before then you go with a much bigger deal after that. Because Rossi is, all told, Rossi is only 22. And so there's still plenty of time for him to work into his prime. But I think we have, as fans, seen some pretty good things already. So hopefully these laid out some interesting scenarios that the Minnesota Wild could look at when signing Jesper and Rossi to their next deals. When we finish the show, we will discuss the big one, Kirill Kaprizov. What could his extension look like? We'll talk about that as we finish today's episode of Locked on Wild after this. One final segment of today's episode of Locked on Wild. Once again, we thank you for making Locked on Wild your first listen each and every day. Make sure for your second listen today, you check out the Locked on NHL podcast, where myself and JD Young of Locked on Sharks will be taking a look at some teams just need to kind of freshen things up a little bit. Locked on NHL is available on all of your favorite podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. So obviously, as we talk about players who are going to be coming up next for potential extensions, Kirill Kaprizov is the one that obviously comes to the top of the list because he's going to get a massive extension. He deserves it. And he's certainly going to he's going to be worth every penny. But at the same time, it's not going to be just the Minnesota Wild that are trying to lock down his services. If there's even a whisper of not being thrilled with what the Minnesota Wild are doing here, that is going to lead to other teams trying to get into this. And if Kirill gets to the point that he doesn't feel as though the team is making enough progress to be a legitimate contender, then he's going to wonder, is this something that I want to stick around for, to see this through? And so what I wanted to do to finish is just look at some comparable extensions for other players that we deem to be superstars and how those have worked out, where Kirill slots in compared to those players. And we'll start at the top of the list. Nathan MacKinnon and Connor McDavid. Both players signing massive extensions to stay with their respective teams. Back in 2018, 2019, Connor McDavid signed an 8-year deal that paid him $100 million. His cap hit $12.5 million per season. Connor McDavid's one of the best players, if not the best player in the entirety of the NHL. But I feel like with these types of deals, you either are or you aren't in terms of being a double-digit $1 million per year salary type of player. Connor McDavid is, no question. Like there's not even a hesitancy to put him on that list. Nathan MacKinnon is as well. McKinnon's deal was 8 years, $100.8 million that was signed in 2023. So his cap hit per season is 12.6. Other players on this list. Let's go to the William Nylander extension that was just signed this offseason. 8 years, $92 million. And a cap hit of $11.5 million per season. Now, what type of player is William Nylander? He had 98 points this past season in 82 games. He scored 40 goals in 2 straight seasons. He's been an 80-plus point player 1, 2, 3 times. And Nylander is 28. So he's a prolific scorer for the Toronto Maple Leafs and a player that is certainly part of their core. But I think that's the key phrase there. He's part of the core. He's not the core. Like he's not the piece that stirs the drink that is the Toronto Maple Leafs. That, of course, is Austin Matthews. A couple of other players, Jack Eichel signed an 8-year, $80 million deal with the Vegas Golden Knights in 2018 after he was traded there. $10 million per season. I think Kirill is going to be able to get higher than that. Because again, Eichel is a very important piece to the puzzle for that Vegas Golden Knights team. He's closer to being like the piece, but I don't think he's necessarily like the piece for them that makes everything go. A lot of different 8-year deals for various superstars. And so I don't think at this point there's any question as to, is it going to be an 8-year deal or, is it going to be somewhat less than that? Kirill will be 29 when his current deal is done. And so you give him an 8-year deal, he'll carry that until he's 37 for this Minnesota Wild team. As far as the AAV goes for what Kirill could demand from the Minnesota Wild, I think because he is, no question, the guy for this Minnesota Wild team, I think he can ask for close to what McDavid and MacKinnon are getting. Because we've seen it play out here over the last few seasons. He is the guy for this team. He is the one that runs the offense, and the offense runs through him. You take him out of the equation, the team just is not anywhere near the same level of competition. And that, from a money standpoint, that means something. So the key for the Minnesota Wild here is when it gets to be time for Kirill's new deal to kick in for the 2026-2027 season, you got to take a real hard look at those books to see what you have on the table for that upcoming season. And Matt Zuccarello will be gone by then. Marcus Johansson will be long gone by then. And you have Jake Middleton, Jonas Brodin, and Jared Spurgeon as of right now, although Jared Spurgeon, that would be the final year of his deal. So will he be playing by then? Remains to be seen. Freddie Gaudreau, Yakov Trenin, Ryan Hartman, Marcus Foligno. Joel Eriksson Ek, Matt Boldy. Those will be the players that we know that will be on that roster for 2026, 2027. If you're going to commit to giving a player that type of money for that long, then you got to make sure that your books are in order to do so. And you got to make sure, again, that you're continuing to move this in a direction to where Kirill is okay with where you're at. He sees the vision going forward, and it's a vision that not only excites him, but we've talked about it on this show previously. A team in which there are other guys that can step up so he doesn't have to be the only one doing it. To where he can say, hey, if I don't have a good night, 3-4 other guys are going to step up and we're going to win no problem. We're not going to have to wonder where the goals are coming from. So you got really a season to figure this out, because I think personally, if you go into 2025, 2026 with nothing inked, that is a very dicey proposition if you're trying to make this extension with Kirill happen. If you go into the final year of it with no sort of agreement, hoping that things go well, and then you'll sign on the dotted line once the season is done, that gets dicey. So it will be very interesting to see what the Wild do with both Marco Rossi and Jesper Wallstedt. We know what they're going to do with Kirill. They're going to offer him as much money as they can to stay. But depending on how that goes, could impact how some of these other extensions look in the next few seasons. So that's what we got for you for today. Appreciate everybody tuning in as always. Make sure to hit that like button if you're watching on YouTube, and leave us a review on your favorite audio platform if you are listening there as well. Make sure, again, to check out the live show and meet and greet coming up on August 25th. It's going to be a lot of fun, so make sure to be there so we can get a chance to meet in person. You'll be able to ask questions for all the guests joining the live show. It's going to be something. So make sure to tune in for more details as we get closer to that. We have new episodes for you every Monday through Friday as part of the Locked On Podcast Network.